here before, welcome to the Bee Crafty YouTube channel. So on Tuesday every week at 8 o'clock I go live and we either play with a product or complete a project. And I will say this year is mostly been, so far it's mostly been completing projects start to finish and bringing in some other things. I did do one which was playing with the inkable 6x6 mandalas, so do go and check that out if you prefer more of a product focus in that. But tonight we're going to be using the Doodle Art Dandedaisy and we're going to be doing some colouring in. So we're going to hang on for a few people to join on the live, so if you are catching up later feel free to fast forward a bit, but if not, just hang around and wait with me. We can do that together, that's not a problem at all. And I will just keep talking, to be honest. There is not a lot of dead space when I'm doing a live. There's just a lot of constant talk. Hi, Alison. Hi, Caroline. Hello, Sammy. Okay, so Shaz, Moira. Hello, everyone. Oh, look at you all just coming in nice and sharp. Right, here we go. Now, those of you that know, hello, Rachel. Those of you that know will know how very excited I am right now, because I'm using the Dandedaisy, okay? Because again, those of you that know, I had lost it. And not as in my marbles, we know they're gone. They're not returning at any sort of rate. No. I had lost my Dandedaisy stamp from my Dandedaisy set. However, this afternoon, yes, I will say I was going to do ATCs tonight, so you'll have to wait till next week, in fairness. Or will next week be a new month? Anywho, ATCs will be another week. Because whilst saying, right, this is it, this time I know it's the real thing, as they sang, I'm going to have a sort out, because I'm literally being buried under my own craft products. I found my Dandedaisy stamp, perfectly safe and well, on my desk, as I predicted it would be, but I had been quite traumatised by its loss. So this evening we're going to celebrate that. We're going to stamp it up. We're going to do some colouring in my stamped ephemera book. So if you haven't seen my stamped ephemera book before, okay, this book is a fairly recent addition in terms of its use. The book I've had for a while. It is quite damaged, actually. And it's just a notebook. It's just a big notebook. It's not any specialist stamping paper or anything like that. But I decided a couple of months ago I was going to stamp all the things in here that I wanted to colour in and things. Basically, so if I could cut them out as and when I had time, and if I didn't have time to or anything like that, I wasn't going to lose them, and they were going to stay safe and secure and undamaged in the book, which actually turned out to be a superbly cracking idea, because it was a couple of months ago I coloured these in. You tend to do that on TikTok Live on a Friday, but I might be changing the format of TikTok Live a little bit. But this tends to be what we do TikTok Live on Friday. And obviously I haven't got a chance to cut out a lot of them or anything, but it does mean they're all still safe and looked after within my book. So it turned out to be a fantastic idea. Now, obviously, if you're very particular about the cardstock you use to stamp and colour on, then you would need to make sure that you went for a higher quality book than I'm currently using. However, I will say there's a lot to be said for just cracking on and having fun with it. Not to mention, I think, which I know doesn't necessarily mean a lot, but I think it does also take some of the pressure off, okay? So, for example, oh, sorry, I've just lost me comments. Oh, Ecky Thump chat. It also takes some of the pressure off. So, when I have been stamping in my stamped ephemera book, I have never stamped everything on the page perfectly. At least one, or usually my first one, funnily enough, does not stamp perfectly. And I think if you're not using a high quality paper and putting that pressure on yourself, it doesn't matter. Okay, so if you're just using a nice everyday sort of cardstock that, you know, isn't your super best stuff, and it hasn't been super expensive or whatever, if you don't stamp it perfectly, you're not as upset about it. You don't have the same amount of pressures. So what we'll do is we're going to stamp a couple of Dandedaisies to start with, at least 2, possibly 3, even 4 if I can get that many on, which I probably can't. So what we're going to do is we're going to work, I'm going to press. You can see I've moved the stamp to the edge of my Super Skinny Slim so I can get it closer to the edge of my book, which means I can hopefully fit more in. Now, if you were being super careful in terms of wanting to utilise all your space, obviously you could rotate them and things like that. But I think 3 is going to be pretty much the best we can do anyway. So obviously now we're out from the seam a little, we can flex a little bit more, which assists, I think. Saying that one I have sort of double stamped a little bit. So, you know, just sort of have to take the... So we're going for a perfect number 3. Huzzah! Look at that. But I don't mind, because I found my Dandedaisy stamp, so all is right with the world. All right. But what I do like to do, so as you can see on your Doodle Art Dandedaisy, we do have lots of different elements. Now, not all of these are ones that I personally want to fussy cut, truth be told. So for example, this lovely little viney thing here, that's something I like to add in. That's not something I want to fussy cut out. And these 3 little dots here, similar sort of thing. Whereas the others, more than happy to stamp and do some fussy cutting out with. So I'm going to take this one that's sort of coloured in like a poppy. This isn't actually really, really good. I'm very glad I coloured it in like a poppy so that you can see it for its poppy-like qualities. But it also does look fabulous in a lot of other colours. And is a great one for layering and just sort of having a play with your colourings. You know, if you get some new colouring pencils, pens, anything like that, it's a great one for practicing because it's quite an open space, but still quite small. So see, yeah, I should have put that a lot closer to the edge. Do you see what I mean? So I could have got more on. But that's all right. I'm just going to stamp a few more. And I will, to be fair, with the smaller stamps on the set, I will put those into other gaps as well. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to make you sit with me all night and colour all of these in. I would quite happily do that, but I'm sure you've got other things to be doing. But we will colour in at least something of all of them. Okay, so next I'm going to go for the smaller version of the Dandedaisy. So this is basically a smaller version of this stamp, but inverted. Okay, so for example, if you'll look, the leaves are on the opposing side. It is literally just a mirror image, but and made smaller. So it's a great one again for adding on to maybe the bottom of art journal pages. A great size for ATCs, of course, and artist trading cards or coins. And for just adding in on journal pages, scrapbook pages, things like that. Just a really, it's a diddy dandy daisy. Oh, that's very onomatopoeic. Right, so we're just going to keep stamping these on. Not to mention, this is also a really good task. If you're like, right, I haven't got time really to do much crafting tonight, but I know I'm going to have time tomorrow and I just want to sit and relax and whatever. I just want to do some colouring. Well, that's fine. Grab a stamp set, whether it's your Dandedaisy or another Doodle Art. I always advise Doodle Art for this sort of thing. Say you want to spend the evening colouring. Say Wednesday night, that's it, I'm colouring in. Right, what I would do is I would get your Dandedaisy and stamp up a sheet of it. And then tomorrow night you can sit down and just colour in and you haven't got to worry about it or anything like that. Right, so now I'm going to go for this small poppy. Starting to run out of space a little, you see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in just some small poppies. I'm going to really fill this sheet up. I don't always go quite this full up, but I think it's good to show you just that you can really get loads on if you want to. Really utilise all the space. If you're cutting out anyway, why not? Right, I'm just going to move it a little bit to that top corner and then wipe my fingers off because I'm bound to get a dark mark, a bit Harry Pottery, but you know what I mean, on something. And then I reckon we can get one more in there. Lovely. Love the way the sheet is filling up. I mean, it just looks like, you know, you look at that and go, oh, there's some good colouring going to happen there. Right, now, there is another flower on here with a fantastic stem, but that's actually not going to be my priority for stamping next. No, in fairness, I will, because otherwise I'll use too many leaves and then I won't do it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these in the gaps for my Dandedaisy, okay? So, I'm going to ink that up. I think I have over inked that slightly, but that's all right. I will say with my, oh, I've got some paint stuck to it. Let's just get that out of the way. So why did a part of my stem miss then? And then one more. Okay. And then, right, there are two leaves. There's a smaller one and a bigger one. I'm not going to stamp the smaller one for the same reason, because I'm not going to want to cut it out, basically. That's one to add in on the stamp project for me. But I am going to take this bigger one. Again, I'm going to put it right on the corner, because, for example, if I put it in the middle of my block there, I can't get it into there. Now, one of the great things about the Super Skinny Slims is because they are super skinny and slim. Not like me. Okay, you can ink it up and get it right into the corner of your page. Okay. So, whilst I finish inking up these leaves, do have a think of maybe some cut if there's any specific colours you would like me to use whilst colouring in tonight, because I am more than happy to do that. Any colour combinations you would like me to try. So yeah, I'm just going to fill up the bottom of here with leaves ready for colouring in. Oh, that one was a bit close. I wasn't paying attention. Will I be able to get another one on the edge? Yes, I just had to flip it upside down. Okay, so I'm just going to wipe that off, put it back on my set, because now I have the full set back together. I am certainly not going to risk it again. I mean, I would like you to remind me of this in a couple of months' time when I've gone, do you remember that Dandedaisy stamp? Yeah, I can't find it again. Look, I'm even gonna give the laminated backing card a clean. It's just, honestly, I was so happy to see it. I put a post in the Bee Crafty Creative, Design Team Facebook group. I did. And used the phrase hallelujah. So, I was pretty psyched. Right. So now we're going to give this a little wafty waft with a heat tool. Like I say, if you were doing this the night before, because you were planning yourself a little colouring evening, you don't have to heat with the heat tool. Leave it to dry overnight and it will be beautiful the next day. Okay, but of course you could heat emboss them at this stage if you wanted to. Totally up to you. Right. I reckon that's dry enough. So now we need a blending mat. So, yeah, so if you're wondering, I wonder what has inspired this nice little cleaning activity Bev has been on. Funny, I will say this funny thing about my cleaning activity though. I cannot find Dinkables set 5 at all. Like, I don't even have one. I won't lie, there's still a couple of Dinkables missing from other sets. But that's okay. I have been rejuvenated by the finding of this stamp set. But Dinkable Set 5 is still completely MIA. And I love that one. It's got like the chevrons and things on it. So, but that seems like a problem for a different day. You have to take the successes. Right, does anyone have any specific colours they would like me to colour with this evening? I'm going to be using... Sorry, I thought I heard something. I'm going to be using some just regular distress ink. I have a few lovely colours out ready to play with. So if there's any specific combinations you would like me to start with, I can do that. If not, I will just proceed as I normally would. Well, first things first, I'm going to put my piece of card in there. Like I say, this is not specialist colouring watercolour designed for this at all sort of paper. But that is not something I generally concern myself with too much. I'm going to get my towel to lean on so I don't smudge. No specific colours. Okay, then why don't we use the backing card as our initial inspiration? So we'll go for a little pink and yellow number. So let's put them to the side a second, and we'll go with some mustard seed and some picked raspberry onto our blending mat. And then I'm going to go in with my mini mister and go spritz, spritz, and also spritz, spritz. Okay. So I'm going to take, oh, hello. That's gone a bit rigid. Hang on a second. Give it a little, work the bristles apart a bit. There we go. Go in with our mustard seed. We're going to go around the edge. Now, again, the beautiful thing about doing it this way is we don't have to concern ourselves too much with if we go inside, outside, around about the lines, because we are planning to cut them out. This is just a colouring sheet. Okay. So we're just going to go around our lines like this. Easy peasy. All right. And then we're going to go to our picked raspberry and go around the outside. I'm going to just sort of, instead of doing it a line, just work in circles so that it's not just a solid line. Okay. And then I'm going to go and just sort of, see the lines here, just sort of go up a little bit. And then I'm going to water this mustard seed down and sort of drag it down a little bit. I won't get the ink to move a lot because this is not a watercolour paper. So that's why I've watered it down. Sort of gone in that way. And then I'll do the same with the picked raspberry. And then pull it up. So this is why I always say, yes, obviously having lovely watercolour cardstock is amazing. But don't think it's a necessity in order for you to get well-coloured images. Okay, so obviously that's a bit wet at the minute. We're going to leave that to dry. And we're going to work on the leaves. And I'll tell you what, we might do all of the leaves while we're here. So I'm going to just go in with this yellow. What I've got left on this yellow, and go down the middle of our leaves. Okay, and this is a really good thing to do if you're colouring en masse like this. You know, if you're colouring a sheet and you've got lots of these leaves to do and you're happy with them all being of a similar layout, do them all together. Okay, and then we're going to spritz and then spritz. I'm not going to worry about cleaning my brush because it actually doesn't matter. And then we're just going to come from the outside in towards the yellow. Not going to cover the yellow, just in towards the yellow. And I love this method of colouring because it is just so quick. You can take a longer time over it, but I would sooner spend more time with my Posca pen afterwards, adding in smaller details. But obviously you can, and I know obviously lots of people have lots of success mixing pen, watercolour and pencils. And I used to be I used to be an alcohol marker purist, but I think just but you do have to have the right cardstock for that in order for them to blend quickly. And this you just don't, right? So you can see we've got the little yellow tints around there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our mode lawn we're using, okay? And I'm actually not going to, I've got a wet brush, but I'm not going to add any more water to it. Okay, and then I'm just going to go around the very outer section and there. Okay. And again, if you're worried about going too far in, just work over that edge because you're going to be cutting it out anyway. And then what that's done, seeing if that's okay, is it's giving you more of a sort of shadow around the edge, giving you that fantastic sort of shading, but with absolutely minimal. I think my brush is starting to dry out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse off the brush, then wipe off the excess, then pick some more up again. I'm not going to spritz this one while I'm working for that shadowy bit around the edge. I'm just going to put a bit more on my mat. And then that's just what your darker shadow sort of brought in. And then you've got those, just that lovely yellow, but those two tones from the one green working together, which makes everything lovely and easy peasy. Lovely and easy peasy. Okay, and I have to say, I do love pink and yellow as a combination for the flowers. I think it works really, really lovely because you can mirror them so easily. And what I mean by that, my husband's got the sneezes, I do apologise. Bless you, if you can hear him. Right, so what I mean by that is, if we take, we're going to take our mustard seed and our picked raspberry again, but we're going to do them the opposite way around. So let's mist this stamp, and again that one isn't perfect because I have sort of double stamped it a little, but I'm not going to worry too much. Okay, so with this one we're going to go around here, and I know I haven't done the centre of the other one yet, we'll do that in a second with our yellow. Let's just flick that up a little, and then just rinse that off. Then we're going to go in with our picked raspberry around the edge. And I think this is a colour combination, just works in both ways. It doesn't matter which way you do it. You know, you could even alternate them, you know. So I'm just going to bring that a little bit further down. And then go back to my mustard seed. This is a fantastic way to celebrate me finding my stamp, I won't lie. And I'm just going to go up and over that join, just quite lightly, because like I say, this is not the pay for this, so I don't want to scruffle it too much because then you'll get the pilling and then you'll be very unhappy with it. Okay, Absolutely lovely. But similar to the leaves, if you then wanted to go and get some picked raspberry, and again, not re-wet your brush, but just have it wet. Okay, you could then pick up some of your picked raspberry. Sort of go to the edges. Just give it. So I think this is also a really good way of showing that even if you've got limited colours in your distress or watercolour palette or whatever it is you're colouring with, you know, don't worry about always using different colours. Mix up the order, you know, because these two are so, you know, they would work on different projects even though they're the same colours. Now, on the sample one, on your backing card, I have all done little pink and little yellow ones on each piece. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mix our mustard seed and picked raspberry together. I'm going to go in with that sort of orangey tone. Now for the other one, I'm just going to put a bit more picked raspberry in. Because it's next to the yellow, it can afford to be a little bit darker. And so it can pop out just a little bit more. Okay. And then again, if you're in a hurry to use these, you can, of course, dry them with your heat tool. I'm going to start them off drying because I do want to finish a couple of these off in a little bit. So we'll start those off. Okay. And then for the last one, what colour should we do the last one? Let's go sort of purple. We'll go for purple. Really get some on there. My wilted violet, I think, had the lid left off at some point. And we'll go for a blueprint sketch. Okay. So, similar sort of thing. Sorry, I want to stay zoomed in so you can see it a bit better. Right. I'm not going to miss the paper on this one. Let's see how it does. Right. So we're going to go with the blueprint sketch first. Around the inside of the flower. Now I can already feel as I'm putting it on, the paper is never going to, I'm not going to get any movement with this at all because there is no, because it's just absorbing this straight away. But, see what I mean? Like the lines are appearing a bit more, but I'm not entirely sure that's a terrible thing. It's just a different look. Okay, so I'm just going to work that out a little bit more. Just keep adding and working. Okay. And to be honest, I do think that's actually quite pretty as it is. I think if you were to add some blue faux stitch around the edge, that would sort of work sort of like a stitched flower. But we're going to go in with some wilted violet and bring in that. But I'm going to work straight down straight away and see how we feel about that is a different way of doing it. I thought it might save some of the bending in the paper, but I don't think it has done. It's just different, that's all. It's not better or worse, it's just different. And we'll go in. So again, I think like the wilted violet would look really nice with the picked raspberry too. But this is a great way to practice your colouring. You know, you don't have to stamp the whole flower. Just stamp the Dandedaisy head all the time. Or like I say, use this smaller sort of poppy one to have a real sort of fun time using your colourings. Now, because of the colours used in this one, now this one I actually feel like I want to get a bit more of the blueprint sketch and on my damp but not wet brush, sort of come right in around And maybe just go up these lines just a little. So I'll just add to them. Get some really good shading around that centerpiece. But make the center a really nice bright vivid yellow. And that gives that lovely pop. Lovely pop. Okay, so again, give that a little waft with the heat tool, and we'll move on to some of the newer ones. So will some of the smaller ones. Now, again, if you are practicing with a new medium or something like that, obviously the smallest flowers are really, really good to practice on. But I'm just gonna but obviously you do have less space to work with. The bigger flowers, if you are new to watercolouring with inks and stuff and the paintbrush, it can be easier to have a bigger space to work on. I'm not for 1 minute suggesting you have to do that. I'm saying it can make it easier. And for me, because your crafting time is supposed to be fun, make it as easy for yourself as you can, would be my recommendation. All right, so on to, and I'm trying to remember to colour left to right so I don't wipe my hand in it. So let me just mist on here. Right, now, I'm going to go back to my mustard seed because I've got that open. I'm going to go around the inside of here. And then I'm going to get this blueprint sketch that's left here. Why not? We're going to go around the outside of this one. And then for the outer petal, I will want it to be richer again in colour. So I'll get my blueprint sketch and just sort of do a stamp that it's not watered down. Pick it up and go around the outside. That has come in a little bit darker than even I was prepared for, but that's fine. So I'll water it a little bit just to get it to move a bit easier for me. But we're not going to worry about those lines, going over the lines, because we are planning to fussy cut these out a different time for our projects. So, but again, I'm going to use that darker one here just to come in, because then that helps tie these two petals together. You know, it makes them look like they're all from the same flower, because they are. I'm going to come in. I'm going to work around the edges here. And then we have this lovely blue poppy. Now, if you're feeling like the yellow has sort of reached a sudden stop, which sometimes I do, what I'll do is I'll go and pick it back up and then just sort of wash around the outside. Now, obviously, if you're going over your blue, that will create a sort of green mix as it goes out, but that's where the two colours are blending. So that's up to you. Now, you could also do the yellow on the inside, but just to give it a pop of something else, I'm going to go back to this little orangey colour we made earlier and just drop that in the middle. Of course, you could do a blue or something. Speaking of this orangey colour, why don't we go and use this as an absolute wash over one of these flowers and see what else we can do with it. So let's use this up off our blending mat rather than wipe it up. I'm going to go, isn't that a lovely colour? You could, that's, in fairness, this is a sort of basis of a lot of my skin tones as well. So, and then you can start adding, oh, see, there I picked up a yellow by accident because I wasn't paying attention. So that's all right, we're just going to use that And we're just going to go around these petals here. So to give it sort of, that was all intentional. And then I'm going to use the rest of that mustard seed in the middle. Okay. And see if you do a flower. For example, me right now. Don't love it. I don't love it. But that's fine. I will love it. Just in a bit. Now you can see the tone of these is changing slightly as they dry. Okay, they are getting a little bit lighter. They're getting a little bit more. Oh yeah, that's better. Because like I say, this is not watercolour paper, so it is going to absorb the water and then dry and change tone. Which is why when I do one where I'm like, I'm not sure I love that, I'll leave it to dry and then I'll make a decision on if or when I want to add anything else to it. Okay? So, I think that's given you some ideas on how I would colour the flowers. Let's just do, I think I'm just going to do one more. So I'm going to do some wilted violet and some picked raspberry. Okay, so let's grab some picked raspberry. And we're going to go around this outside here. And then I'm going to do wilted violet in the middle. You can tell I start to get to the stage where I just want to do it quickly. Because I'm reaching that I want to do Posca editions phase of the colouring in process. Okay, and then I'm actually going to do the wilted violet out here. So, for example, for all the others, well, for these two, I've sort of kept that stronger colour. It's outside and outside. But this is a good way of mixing it up. Now, if anyone wants to come on and say, yeah, but that's not how flowers grow in the wild, well, I have got an excellent thing to tell you. It's just a drawing, so it doesn't matter. And you don't even need to draw it. You can just stamp it, because I did the drawing. I'm just going to go back, add in some of this pink, just to almost flood wherever I missed, because that's how I get once I reach a certain stage of the colouring in process. And actually, that's one of my favourite ones I've done. And pick up some more of this mustard seed in the middle. BEA, beautiful. Is there any other colours anyone would like to see me do whilst I'm here? I'm just going to waft these with the heat tool. Would I see any of the others coloured in? The leaves I'll do the similar way to up there, so you don't need to worry about that one too much. But again, if when they dry off, you're like, that's actually come across much paler than I wanted. I wanted a more intense colour. That's why I use my regular distress and not oxides. You absolutely can do that. Now, the thing, you can add to them. Now, the thing with using regular distress instead of oxides, though, is obviously you do get that it's dyed the paper rather than covered it. Okay, so you do, and there's pros and cons to all of that, really. It means you don't have that sort of chalky texture, because bear in mind we're oxidizing our oxides when we get them wet. So you do have that, the sort of vivids, but what the result of that is, they do have that we've dyed the paper rather than covered it look. So because they're not as opaque. So there's different ones, you know, depending on what you want to do. Okay, here comes the Posca. All right, now you will find on most of your Doodle Art backing cards there is sort of little Posca details and stuff from when I have coloured them in for the packaging. On here there's a little pink faux stitch. Okay, so it doesn't always have to be a white Posca. It can be another colour, but I have to be honest, white Posca is sort of my lean-to. Okay. So I'll take my white Posca here, and I'll probably just go all the way around each petal. I might even go actually coming out from the center, because I think you're going to lose a lot of those details in the yellow. So we'll just, but you can see it sort of had a grayness when we first did it that's gone now as it's dried. It is much more vivid color. Okay, but what I might do with something like this is take I know what I'm looking for. Something like just a felt pen, just a felt pen. This is just a Crayola super tip, and pick out a few like I have on the packaging, just because you've got all these little separated bits, you know, to really highlight them, give it a more fun center, I suppose. And then I'll use my Posca down the stem just to create a bit of interest. Okay, but again, you can also then go on these bright coloured bits with your Posca. If if you do them and you think it's too bright, you want to knock it back a little bit, you can also do that. And then I'm going to do a stitch on a couple of different areas of the leaf. And this is where I have to be honest, having the darker section really helps, because it means you've got somewhere for it to show up, which is really, really good. Okay, now on this pink one, again, obviously we've got a similar thing where we've got the yellow in the middle. So what I'll do on this one, I'll do the dots around the outside of the petals. You could also do it as a faux stitch. You could also add in some more doodle details, of course. I will say, when I'm talking about adding in doodle details with a black pen and things like that for our stamps, I can only speak for our stamps. There is lots of stamp designers who do not like you altering the main image of the stamp and making it look like it stamps differently than it does. We're absolutely okay with that. You can add to it, as obviously you're not trying to resell it as a stamp. But yeah, we love to see you mix and match. Like, for example, if you wanted to put that head on these leaves and things like that, do check with individual stamp companies if you are making to sell before you do that, because not all of them are okay with it, which is absolutely their prerogative. Okay, so then I'm going to use this bright pen, this sort of really vivid pink one that we just used over here, to do some dots coming out. Now, I'm going quite quick, to be honest, but if you wanted to take more time, you could. But in all honesty, even if you weren't here, I would still be doing it quickly. So I'm not for 1 minute implying that your presence is what's making me try and do it quickly. I like results, and I like results fast. So I like adding details in, but they need to come up with the goods and how I want it to look quite quickly. All right, so then I'm going to go around the bottom of here with my Posca, almost create a frame around the center section of my flower, which I actually think looks really, really pretty. So I really, really like that. And then we'll go to the blue and the wilted violet. Now for this one, I'm going to add in some sort of, these are quite quick, and just add those in. And then just sort of gives it sort of tames down that blue. This is also a really good technique if you feel like you've added too much colour to one section. It can just really knock it back a little. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some circles to all these lines specifically. I'm not going to sort of go off them. You know, you can extend them slightly, but just stay on the trajectory of those lines. I will say, if you want to really sort of change up how the flowers look, you know, also try heat embossing them in a metallic colour. That's lovely and works really, really well. You know, so but again, so we're just going to work down these. And if I wanted to add more in, I would literally just doodle some more in before I did it. Again, I'm just going to add a few little highlights to the centre of that one. And then, so I've got 3 dots here, so I'll just sort of put some white on there. And then I'm going to add 3 dots there. And 3 dots there. Then and then that blue one's just got a very sort of different look now. It's almost quite pastel-y. All right, so moving on to the smaller ones. Okay, now obviously we've got a lot less space to play with now, so it's how much you want to add in, really. So these ones, I'm just gonna, there we go, settled on 5. So whatever I sort of add to the first outer one, that's what I'll work with, if I can. But it's not something I'm gonna lose sleep over if I can't fit 5 in each one. And I'm gonna put a dot on the end of each one of those lines, like we just did on the blue and wilted violet Dandedaisy. And then again, I think we'll just add some little dot highlights to the centre of there, just to lighten it up a bit, because it's just a bit of fun. And tell you what, we'll do the same. No, I'll tell you what, with this one, we're just going to add in some stitches. Let's do 3 or 4, depending on what we can fit in. I'm going to do another row around the inside. These are also brilliant flowers for stamping on scrap or catalyst card, things like that. If you don't want to, if you want to have some stamped ephemera ready to go, but you don't necessarily want to colour them in or create a background to stamp them on, take something like a catalyst card, stamp a load on, cut them out. The hard work's done for you. You can always add a bit of pen detail as well without having to go too mad about it. Right, this one, I'm still not loving it, I have to say. What other colours could I add? The white pen's going down, just a second while I have a think. Let's get my map back. I feel like it needs something else. Okie dokie, let's go with, because I don't really like it as it is, I'm going to go with what's on my mat the most. I've got a lot of green left over, so I'm going to go with that and see if I can make myself like what's here. So we're going to go in with this one. I do tend to do a couple, if I'm with the smaller flowers, I'll tend to do a couple in the same colour format, because, you know, I'll tend to use a couple on a project. It's going over the top of here. It's giving it sort of like a sagey sage green colour. Right, and then we're just going to colour wash some more mustard seed over the top with that sort of mowed lawn become sage green colour. Well, I think that's much better, and that will work really, really nicely on a more neutral tone, or if I'm looking for something to sit behind but not overpower, that's going to work really, really nicely. So let's give that a little dry with the heat tool. So as you can see, obviously the colours do come through. Which is why I put the piece of white card behind. It doesn't have to be white card, it could be any really. It's just to protect the sheet below. Alrighty, and then we'll go for, grab the Posca back, move that back out the way so I don't put my elbow in it. And we're going to add some dots on here. I'm putting a lot more on. And then I'm going to do stitch lines up here. And in all honesty, what I might do with this is use it with some leaves, either these or the leaves off the sunflower doodle art, something like that, because I feel it is more of a, because I can't think of what other colours I put it with. In fairness, I could put it with another orange or green flower, couldn't I? A little dab, 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 dab on there. Okay, so that's basically the start of how I'll colour the entire sheet. I'll use different colourways. So for example, if I take us back to something like this, okay, you can see the different colours you can use together if you want to use defined edges. And then obviously you've got your reds and yellows that can go together. We've got another blue and purple one there, a blue and a yellow. And then you've got these one here. So in fairness as well, keeping your stamped ephemera all together in the same book also gives you a reference point. So for example, if you stamp these up and you're not really sure where to start, you can have a look at some other ones that you've done before that you like the combination colours of and go. But things like the leaves, I'll do those relatively quickly. So you can see, for example, on this sheet, I did some cooler ones and then did some warmer toned ones so that I've got both ready for whatever project. So thank you very much for joining me this evening. I'm very glad you could celebrate the finding of my Dandedaisy doodle art stamp with me. I think I'll definitely be celebrating that the rest of the week. So if you would like to see a completed project using the Dandedaisy, I will most likely be using at least one of these in my live in Crafting Together with All Brands on Thursday. If you cannot do that and you're catching up with this YouTube much well, not much later, but later on in the week, that video will be uploaded and be the next one available. And if you are liking things like the doodle art stamps, there is a doodle art playlist right here on YouTube, so you can go and check projects just made with doodle art stamps. There'll be lots in there, including cards, ATCs, art journal pages and things like that, made using the doodle art stamps. Sally should be live on the Bee Crafty Facebook page tomorrow at 8 p.m. if you are interested. She always makes something absolutely beautiful, so you should definitely check that out. As you see us and see posts or videos or makes on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Reels, where else? Threads, all of those places. If you could interact with our posts when you see them, like, hit the thumbs up, follow us, subscribe, all of the lovely things that really help, that would be absolutely amazing, and we would really appreciate it. If you could leave a comment on any post you see, that would be fantastic. If you have any questions about anything, please either comment on the post or send us a message, and we will do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. Please like and subscribe right here on YouTube, because that's where all our videos go. Bye.